There is a story that is hard to believe for humanity but is true, that is stopping the Great Flood. You cannot imagine how terrible it is, and entering this story, please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment to support the channel, and we will start the story so you do not have to wait long. There is a strange phenomenon that most scholars, anthropologists, and lovers of ancient legends must acknowledge. Almost every civilization in the world, whether in Europe, Asia, Africa, or the distant Americas, has preserved within its collective memory a story about a great flood, a catastrophic deluge that submerged the entire world, sweeping away everything and leaving behind only fragile remnants of life. These stories appear in the Old Testament of the Hebrew Bible, in the Mesopotamian epic of Gilgamesh, in Greek mythology with Deucalion and Pyrrha, in the myths of India, China, and Japan, as well as in the legends of the Maya, Aztec, Inca, and the Polynesian tribes scattered across the Pacific. Even the small communities living in the icy lands of Alaska or deep within the Amazon rainforest are no exception. They too preserve memories of an apocalyptic flood. Why does such a strange coincidence exist? Is it merely a mythical tale invented by humanity to explain our shared fear of nature, or did a real global flood disaster occur in the distant past, leaving such a profound mark that humankind was compelled to etch it into memory across generations? This question not only puzzles scientists but also exerts an irresistible fascination on anyone interested in the origins and collective imagination of humanity. The Great Flood, in most of these stories, is not simply a natural event. It is often described as an act of divine punishment upon humankind. When people became arrogant, chaotic, or fallen into sin, the gods grew angry and decided to cleanse the world with water, a symbol of destruction, but at the same time, a symbol of rebirth. Amid the raging waters, only a few were chosen to survive. They clung to a mountain, a piece of wood, a boat, or were even saved by animals. These survivors became the seeds of humanity after the catastrophe. If we look deeper, we can see that the story of the Great Flood reflects a primal human fear, the terror of being swallowed by nature. Water, in the ancient consciousness, both nurtured life and could just as easily destroy it. Rivers brought fertile harvests, yet they could also overflow and drown entire villages. The sea offered an endless source of food, yet it was also an abyss that claimed the lives of those who dared to challenge it. For this reason, floods have always been among the most frequently mentioned natural disasters in the mythologies of the world. However, the Great Flood is not merely about fear. It is also a promise of rebirth. When the waters recede, the sky clears, the earth becomes fertile once again, and humanity begins a new era, purer, stronger, and perhaps more humble before the power of nature and the divine. In other words, embedded within the legends of the Great Flood lies a duality: destruction and creation, death and life, an ending and a beginning. It is not hard to understand why this story continues to captivate us to this very day. We, the people of the 21st century, still live in a world where water can be both friend and foe. Storms, floods, tsunamis, rising sea levels due to climate change all remind us that we are not so different from the ancients who once trembled while recounting tales of a flood that nearly wiped out humankind. Perhaps this is why, whenever we speak of the Great Flood, our hearts stir with a mixture of fear, curiosity, and an uncanny sense of fascination. This introduction is like a doorway, leading us into a long journey, one where we will pass through different civilizations, listening to how each of them told the story of the apocalyptic flood in their own way. From Noah on his great ark crossing the vast seas, to the hero Utnapishtim in the epic of Gilgamesh, from Deucalion and Pyrrha sowing the seeds to renew humankind, to the American legends of ancestors transforming into birds to escape the raging waters. All of these stories, though different, are woven together into a single mythical tapestry, the immortal memory of a day when the entire world was swallowed by water, and from which humanity stepped into a new chapter of existence. And so, before we explore these colorful variations, let us hold in our hearts one lingering question: was the Great Flood truly a shared collective memory of all humankind, or merely a mirror reflecting the fears and aspirations of people from the dawn of time? The Great Flood in the Bible, Noah's Ark. In the religious and cultural history of the West, no image is more iconic than the story of Noah and the Ark. In the Old Testament, the book of Genesis tells how, when humankind became filled with violence and sin, God grew angry. He saw humanity falling into corruption, betrayal, greed, and the destruction of justice itself. Thus, he decided to cleanse the world with a catastrophic flood lasting 40 days and 40 nights, drowning all life upon the earth. In his wrath, only Noah, a righteous man, was chosen by God. He was commanded to build a massive wooden ark, divided into many compartments, with 3 decks, large enough to hold his family and a pair, male and female, of every living creature on earth. When the rains began to fall and the waters rose to cover the land, the ark floated atop the boundless ocean. For 40 days and 40 nights, the heavens poured unceasing rain, while from below the fountains of the deep burst forth. Mountains disappeared beneath the waves, plains vanished, and every living being outside the ark perished. When the waters finally receded, Noah released a dove to see if the land had dried. On the 3rd attempt, the dove returned carrying an olive branch in its beak, a sign that new life was beginning to blossom once more. The image of Noah stepping out of the ark, beholding the rainbow that God placed in the sky as a covenant — I will never again destroy the world with water — has become one of the most powerful symbolic moments in human civilization. It embodies both divine wrath and the promise of renewal. This story has been etched into art, literature, and the hearts of millions of believers. Yet what is truly remarkable is that it is not unique. For in another land, Mesopotamia, thousands of years before the Bible, there existed a strikingly similar tale. The flood in the Epic of Gilgamesh, Mesopotamia. Around 2000 BCE, in Mesopotamia, the cradle of human civilization, there emerged a monumental work known as the Epic of Gilgamesh. Within this epic, a character named Utnapishtim recounts the story of a world-destroying flood. The gods, angered by the noise and chaos of humankind, resolved to wipe them all out. Yet Ea, a deity who took pity on humanity, secretly warned Utnapishtim. He instructed him to build a massive boat, sealed with bitumen, and to bring aboard his family and every kind of living creature. The flood waters raged for 7 days and 7 nights, covering all the earth. At last, when the sun broke through, Utnapishtim released birds to test whether the land had reappeared, first a dove, then a swallow, and finally, he then released a raven. The raven did not return, a sign that the land had dried. Utnapishtim and his family stepped out of the boat and offered sacrifices of thanksgiving to the gods. What astonishes researchers is the striking resemblance between the story of Utnapishtim and that of Noah. Both were righteous men warned by the divine through a dream, both built massive boats, both brought animals aboard, both released birds to test for dry land, and both survived to inaugurate a new era of humanity. Did the Bible inherit this tale from the civilizations of Sumer and Babylon? Or were both accounts drawn from a shared collective memory of an actual flood in humanity's distant past? Whatever the truth may be, the parallels show that the Great Flood had already been deeply engraved into human consciousness since the dawn of history. The Greek legend, Deucalion and Pyrrha. In the West, beyond the Bible, the ancient Greeks also preserved their own tale of a world-ending flood. According to the legend, Zeus grew angry at humankind for their corruption, impiety, and disregard for the gods. he resolved to destroy them with a devastating deluge. Only Deucalion the son of Prometheus and his wife Pyrrha were warned beforehand. They built a large boat. As the rain poured down and the sea rose, all of humanity was drowned. After 9 days, their vessel came to rest on the summit of Mount Parnassus. What is remarkable is how Deucalion and Pyrrha repopulated the world in a symbolic fashion. They cast stones behind their backs. The stones thrown by Deucalion turned into men, while those cast by Pyrrha became women. This legend emphasizes that from dust, from hard stone, humanity can be reborn, a symbol of indomitable vitality. And even when the gods grow wrathful, humankind still finds a path to begin anew. The stories of India, China, and Japan. Not only in the West but also in the East, countless tales of floods can be found. India, in the Matsya Purana, the god Vishnu transforms into a giant fish to warn King Manu of an impending flood. Manu builds a boat, sets it adrift upon the ocean, and the fish pulls it to safety. This tale is considered one of the earliest seeds of the Hindu belief in rebirth and the cyclical nature of the universe. China, the legend of Yu the Great tells how, instead of annihilation, Yu learned how to tame the waters, guiding them to the sea. This is not merely a story of flood but also a lesson in the management of nature, offering another perspective. Water is not always punishment, but a challenge for humanity to adapt and survive. Japan, in certain myths of the Ainu people in Hokkaido, the gods once grew angry and unleashed a great flood. Only a few survived by clinging to drifting logs, later becoming the ancestors of humankind. The legends of the Americas, Maya, Aztec, Inca. In the Americas, those dazzling civilizations also preserved their own flood stories. The Maya, they told that the god Hunabku had created many worlds, but when humankind became arrogant, he drowned them in the sea, sparing only a few couples to rebuild a new era. The Aztec, they spoke of an age called the Fourth Sun, which ended in a great flood. Humans were transformed into fish to survive. Afterward, a fifth sun was born, the very age in which we now live. The Inca, their legend recounts that the god Viracocha destroyed humanity with a flood, sparing only 2 siblings who survived inside a wooden box, and who later became the ancestors of a new humanity. Indigenous tribes and Oceania. From the small tribes of North America to the far islands of Polynesia, all preserved memories of a great flood. The Native Americans of the Great Plains told how a giant turtle carried humanity across the flood waters. The Hawaiians believed that the goddess of the sea unleashed the deluge to test humankind. The Maori of New Zealand passed down tales that their ancestors survived by clinging to wooden canoes upon the vast ocean. What is astonishing is that communities separated by thousands of kilometers, with no cultural contact, still told stories of the same haunting theme, water engulfing everything, with only a few spared. Common threads and differences. Looking back, we see that most of these legends share certain themes. The gods grow angry and use the flood to punish humanity. A righteous figure is forewarned, who either builds a boat or clings to a mountain. Animals often appear: fish, birds, turtles, scorpions serving as companions or helpers. After the flood, humanity is reborn, the beginning of a new era. The difference lies in how each civilization interprets it. In Judaism and Christianity, it is a moral cleansing. In Hinduism, it represents the cosmic cycle. In China, it is a lesson in controlling the waters. In the Americas, it is the reincarnation of the sun. The scientific perspective: did the Great Flood really happen? Many geologists and archaeologists believe that a real event may indeed have occurred in the past. For instance, the melting of the glaciers at the end of the Ice Age, around 12,000 years ago, when sea levels rose dramatically, submerging vast areas of land. Other hypotheses suggest it could have been caused by a massive tsunami triggered by a meteorite impact or by great earthquakes. Even if the event was not truly global in the way myths describe, for the small ancient communities who lived through it, it must have felt like the end of the world, and that memory was passed down, transformed into legend. When we close this journey across countless civilizations, from the sacred texts of the ancient Middle East to the myths of indigenous peoples dwelling in remote forests and boundless seas, we realize that the Great Flood is not just a single story. It is a collective memory woven from the fears, beliefs, and survival instincts of all humankind. What is strange and most captivating is the almost unbelievable similarity among the tales. Separated by thousands of miles, without knowing of each other's existence, the Sumerians, the Hebrews, the Greeks, the Maya, the Inca, the Maori all told of an apocalyptic flood. In every story, the waters rise to sweep everything away, leaving only a few survivors, and from them humanity is reborn. This can hardly be dismissed as mere coincidence. It suggests that some event, a catastrophic flood, a geological upheaval, or a chain of natural disasters, must truly have happened in the distant past. And because the trauma was so profound, humans passed it down through countless generations, transforming it into legend. Yet the Great Flood is not only about natural disaster. Beneath the raging waters lies a story of morality and philosophy. In the Bible, it is divine punishment for sin, and at the same time a new covenant between God and humankind. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, it is a reminder of the gods' power and capriciousness. In Greek mythology, it is a lesson that humanity can be reborn even after falling to the lowest depths. In India, it reflects the endless cycles of the cosmos. In China, it symbolizes resilience. Instead of cowering in fear, humanity learns to master and control nature. Perhaps it is precisely because of these layers of meaning that the Great Flood has never been just an old story. It is a mirror of humanity, showing that we have always questioned ourselves: why do we exist? What makes us worthy of survival? And could it be that one day, nature might rise again to test us once more? Today, as we face news of storms and floods, rising seas, melting polar ice, and climate change, the story of the Great Flood suddenly feels strikingly familiar. It is no longer only an ancient myth. It becomes a warning: if humankind continues to live in excess and destroy nature, then the new Great Flood may not come from the wrath of the gods, but from our own misguided actions. And when we think of it, the images of Noah on his ark, Utnapishtim in his wooden boat, Deucalion casting stones to revive humankind, or King Manu holding on to the divine fish Vishnu, these are no longer just figures from legend. They are symbols of survival and hope. For no matter how high the waters rise, no matter how the world may collapse, humanity always finds a way to begin again, to rise from the ruins, to plant the seeds of tomorrow. Thus, the Great Flood does not only teach us about destruction, it teaches us about faith. Faith that after every ending, there is still a new beginning. That humankind, though small and fragile, carries within itself the strength to overcome the raging tides and continue writing its own story. Perhaps we will never know for certain whether there truly was a global deluge. But one thing is undeniable: the Great Flood has been, is, and will forever be a part of humanity's memory, at once a haunting, a spiritual legacy, and a reminder for both present and future. And if one day we must again face a new flood, whether unleashed by nature or wrought by our own hands, may we, like Noah, like Utnapishtim, like Deucalion, and like countless figures of ancient lore, know how to preserve an olive branch, a spark of hope, so that humankind may endure, stepping into a new age humbled, yet stronger before the boundless universe.